Hello, I would like to do a book review today of one of my favorite books that I've read, and that is Founding Brothers, The Revolutionary Generation by Joseph Ellis. It was published in 2000. This is the 2002 paperback copy, obviously. It won the Pulitzer Prize in History, and it's just a really great read. This is a book about the early days of the United States, and it talks about the Founding Brothers, he calls them here. We usually talk about them as the Founding Fathers: George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, Alexander Hamilton, John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Aaron Burr, and it also talks about Abigail Adams in here a little bit as well. So and it tells the stories of these different people in a very different style. You know, most history books, it's kind of a narrative where you start in 1790 and you go to 1804. But Joseph Ellis in this book, what he does is he takes each chapter and he tells like a self-contained story in each chapter. It takes a little event from that period of time, tells the story about that event, and then draws broader and wider conclusions from that about what it meant for the time and for the future of the United States of America. For example, the first chapter is called The Duel, which talks about the duel between Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, and how Aaron Burr, the vice president at the time, killed Alexander Hamilton in a duel. And he talks about this story and discusses, you know, what happened there and what took place, why these guys dueled, and then, you know, what was the meaning of this duel? What happened as a result of this duel to the future of America? The next chapter is The Dinner, which talks about Thomas Jefferson hosting a dinner between two people who really didn't get along, Alexander Hamilton again and James Madison, and how they came to this dinner and were able to discuss with each other kind of through the mediation of Thomas Jefferson and come to an agreement, which resulted ultimately in Madison getting a compromise that allowed the capital of the United States to be moved to Washington, D.C., and Alexander Hamilton was able to get his kind of vision of how the finances should be handled in the government taking place. And it just goes on. You know, there's a chapter about slavery, or how it was dealt with, or how it was not dealt with actually at the time, called The Silence. There's a chapter, my favorite, the Friendship, which talks about the friendship between really two very different people, Thomas Jefferson and John Adams, how they disagreed about many things, but they maintained a friendship that really lasted for much of their life. Although at times they didn't speak, and at times they were great enemies on opposing sides of what the revolution meant and what the future of the United States should be. But just a really great story. And that's one of the things I really like about this book, is that style that he wrote in, taking kind of each chapter as a self-contained story that really kind of provides the urgency and the improvisation that was going on at the time for these guys. You know, they didn't know what was going to happen and what America would really become, but they had different visions about it, and they had to work together, they had to argue together. In one case, they shed blood over it, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr, for example. But in the end, this book does a great job of bringing history alive, and it's written in a great style. You can really see the scholarship that went into this book, but it's written in such an interesting style that it's accessible to the broader public, and it's just a great read, like I said earlier. I would say that, you know, to come to this book, it would be good to have some sort of background knowledge of the period of the early days of the United States, and kind of have that outline in your head to really get the full benefit from this book. But very well written, and you know, like I said, it's a self-contained chapter, each one, so you don't have to read the whole book. You can just take one chapter out, and it really makes sense on its own. It kind of stands on its own as a chapter. So, as you can see, I highly recommend this book, and I would say go out, get a copy for yourself. Founding Brothers, The Revolutionary Generation by Joseph Ellis. Have a good day.